Here it is. Here's this agile thing. I'm Matt Beam.
I'm Mike Markey.
I'm Jeff Singleton.
I'm no longer going to greet the ships at sea. Makes me sound old. Sorry, Mike.
That's a good thing you didn't even bring it up.
Yes, I was this close to making an antiquated reference.
I'm so happy to see that you were able to control the urge.
Yeah, that's
to use an antiquated reference.
We control urges.
There are still ships at sea.
Yeah, and by the way, we can talk to them with Starlink now. It's available, and so somebody could be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and listening to your voice.
That would be amazing.
Anyway, it's the solstice.
Do you get the That's true. It's like the point of maximum darkness.
Yes, shortest day of the year right now.
Well, it's the shortest daylight of the year. The days are still the same size.
Ooh, he got you on a technicality.
Did you just beat me on a technicality? God.
Well,
no, I can't. No, that's true. It's least amount of day. So what if what you care about is light? You're screwed today.
But vampires, they're good today.
It's good for that.
but when you think about it, where we are, in Chicago area, we can spend much of the winter in semi-darkness anyway because, the cloud cover, heavy cloud cover. So the fact is, it's a sunny day.
That's true.
And I'll take it.
It's a sunny day, although it's, 10 a.m. Central on a Saturday morning, and yet the quality of the daylight looks like it's afternoon or later in the day. It doesn't.
Yeah, but you're in a basement, so it doesn't count.
No, I'm not. I'm in my office. That's upstairs.
Oh, okay.
I can see. I have a window over there.
Mike's like, it's dark here all the time. I don't know what you're saying.
There was 2 years in the basement. That was
yes. So, what's going on today, gentlemen? This is maybe the holiday special for Here's This Agile Thing. I speculated Nigel was going to talk to us today. He rescheduled.
There was so much we could have learned from him today.
We were going to talk Scrum at Toyota. That's going to be coming up later.
I love what they do for me.
Toyota?
There you go. You don't remember the commercial? It was a whole song.
No, I don't.
Love what you do for me, Toyota. No?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think you're thinking of Have You Driven a Ford lately?
No, I've driven a Ford even last night.
Gosh. What was that? Back in the 70s or 80s?
80s, 90s.
Yeah.
It was current at the 80, 90. I know that it was at the 90s, and maybe my memory of it is a little stronger because one of the things we had at our wedding in 1992 was this thing where we said that we weren't going to kiss if people clink glasses. We made them sing a song with the word love in it. And it didn't matter what the song was or how many times the word love appeared. And it worked. We had 3 competing major groups of people. Our coworkers, no, actually 4. Our coworkers, my college friends, her family, and her high school friends. And they were all competing. Now, note, I didn't name my family. My family didn't get up and sing. But everyone else did. And our work table, one guy actually stood up. One time they stood up, they sang the Love Boat theme song. But one time they stood up and the guy just went, I love what you do for me, Toyota, and sat back down again. And it was like, that counts.
Nice.
So that's why it's etched.
I'm a little bit stuck
forever.
on the idea that you encourage people to sing at your wedding.
It was awesome. It was so cool.
I'm going to let that go. So I had some fun this week dealing with LLMs locally. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that. You might not want to talk about AI. I understand.
LLMs?
LLMs.
No,
let's
talk about it.
Do tell.
Okay.
Regale us with your experiences with the artificial...
Or the augmented intelligence.
Regale is quite
the
a standard.
Language model.
So the idea is, you might want to use an LLM to analyze data. Now, currently, you can get an account at Perplexity or Google, whatever Google's doing. There's a number of places you can talk to that will answer your questions pretty good. But obviously, you're giving your data over to them. It's going into their system. They're doing stuff with it. You can't control your data. So that's a problem if you have any sort of sensitive data, right? So the idea was like, can I take an extract of metadata and ask it questions, visualize work, things like that? And the answer is no, not really, but we're super close. So have you guys looked at any of the LLMs that you can download locally? Because there's a range of them, right? And I don't really understand, but there's a correlation between the number of parameters a model has. So like Llama, for example, there's different versions of Llama, the open source thing from Meta, Zuckerberg's thing. So like there's Llama 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and within each one of these, there are different sizes. So Llama 3.2 has like a 3 billion parameter model version of it. It's got a 7 billion parameter. There's a 70 billion parameter model. And so obviously the more parameters in the model, the more RAM you need, essentially, which makes sense. So trying this locally on a data set, just as sort of a made-up sort of data set, right? I said, because I created this data set of, it's basically like an extract from a work item thing. It's a CSV file. So, each one is a user story, let's say. And so there's an ID number, there's a title, there's what team they're working on, the date that the thing started and ended. So we're trying to get to, can you calculate flow metrics with it? And also, can you visualize it? That's really the key. I was trying to see if we could visualize this data. Because there's a number of ways to visualize data with products, but at some point, you'll just be able to ask a robot to say, here's this data. Do you recognize it? Can you do these things with it? Tell me a story. Let me ask you questions about this data. The real, I think, North Star is, hey, this data represents a plan for all these teams. This is what these teams intend to do over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, right? Show me the plan, and then let me play with it. Let me make changes to the plan. Let me ask you questions about how to change the plan or implications to if we put this in here, stuff has to move. That's really where we're going at some point. Mike's brain he's got a number of objections.
I don't want to say I have objections. Perhaps I am expressing perplexity.
Yes. Well done. I would recommend that. Perplexity is a great app. So short answer is the LLM that I was able to load didn't do it locally.
Oh, okay. How many billions did you download?
I tried Llama 3. So the 3 billion and the 7 billion parameter model worked okay, but it couldn't do things like identify, give me a unique list of all the team. Go through these 3,000 work item records that all have different team names. Give me a list of all the a list of unique team names you find from that field. The 3 billion, 7 billion, they really couldn't do it, right? When I took this fake data, because I don't have a machine with, my biggest machine here has 64 gigs of memory on my Mac Mini. No, it's a Mac Studio M1. So it's a pretty beefy machine, but it wasn't really able to it couldn't load up to 70 billion parameter. The 3 and the 7, they weren't able to really answer stuff. When I took that same fake data, uploaded it to Perplexity, it does. It can calculate, it can give you the correct list of teams. It can calculate the cycle time.
But they've got a lot more horsepower than you do.
That's exactly right. They're running, I don't know what they're running on the back end, but it's all it's like a big Unix box with I'm just taking a slice of time.
Is anyone doing this with distributed processing? Those, I don't know if Tor is actually one of them, but there's things where you can do distributed downloads, and I know there are systems where we used to do faster builds by sharing processor time among different machines. So is there a large language model service that's doing sort of an open source processing sharing
Short answer, yes. I don't know
sure there
specifically
is.
who. Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, so the bottom line on this is I'm thinking about throwing $6-7 at a Mac Mini. So the Mac Pro and the Mac Studio are out of cycle. They're about to release a new one. But you can get a MacBook Pro M4 with 128 gigs of memory. That memory shared between the GPU and the CPU. And it can run the 70 billion parameter model. So
You're sure about that?
Yeah,
I've
are
seen
you
people do it
positive?
on YouTube. I've seen because obviously a lot of people are talking about this. So I had that specific question: does the new M4 MacBook Pro, if you max it out, can it handle the 70 billion parameter that can do all this stuff? And the short answer is yes. It runs it.
So 3 billion, no good answer. 7 billion, no good answer. You're assuming 70 billion will give you a good answer, and that's worth $6-7 to.
I'm not assuming it. I'm saying
Okay.
that is the hypothesis. So the thing that's missing is I haven't taken the specific data set. It's a 3,000 record thing that I, have created. I haven't run that on the new Mac, but like I've seen people run the 70 billion parameter on a M4, and it seems perfectly performant. Actually, I don't know. Actually, I do know because I ran it in Perplexity. And Perplexity lets you choose the model. So I was using Sonar Huge. I wasn't using 3.3, the same model. Llama 3.3 is not available in Perplexity. So I haven't tested the specific combination. You're right, Mike. I don't know that specifically. But so that's the hypothesis. It would be technically possible, I think, if you want to throw $7 at it.
Okay, so
start
you're gonna.
asking
So just to be clear, you're gonna throw $7 at a problem to answer
No.
the question. Give me the name of the unique teams in this data set. I'm pretty sure you can do that for about $50 yourself.
Yeah. No, that is not what I'm. Yeah. There's a lot.
just-
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
So Matt, the 7K, not that you're going to spend it,
Yeah.
but is that just for the M4?
Yes. It's just a
Get
MacBook.
out of here.
It's got 128 gigs of memory and 4 or 8 terabytes of
I think you
storage.
should buy 5 of them. And then
And
No,
network them
seriously.
together,
And
sharing.
hook them together, absolutely. And you could have your own MacBook Cray sort of thing going on.
Can you just buy the motherboard? Forget
McRae,
the whole.
that's
you don't.
it.
You don't
It's a
need the
McRae.
screens.
Well, you can actually, because you can. So,
Just make a
You-
rack.
I mean, the thing that you need for LLMs is the GPUs, right? And you can get what is it? An NVIDIA 3090 or a 4090. They're thousands of dollars a piece, and they also only have like 24 gigs of memory per. So you would need 3 or 4 of them to get the same amount of memory. I think one of the key constraints here is you need to be able to take the whole model and fit it into RAM. And that RAM, I think if you can daisy chain multiple GPUs together, you could fit that big 70 billion parameter model into the combined RAM of all the video GPUs if you get multiple NVIDIAs. But if you did 3 or 4 NVIDIA GPUs of that size, it would equal the cost at least of them. Like that's more expensive than the MacBook. Not even without a CPU, storage, power supply, all the rest of that stuff. It kind of makes sense. I mean, I criticize Apple all the time, but they've really focused on power per watt, right? Efficiency. And they've got a really good offering, I think, because the unified memory, it's got 120 gigs of memory in the new one. And that can be it's unified in the sense it can be totally shared.
120 gig?
128 gigs of memory.
128, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
It was an unusual number.
120.
I wasn't going to say odd, but
Yeah.
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 Okay, 128.
But
makes
but that whole pool can be used by the CPU or the GPU or any combination. It's part of that new architecture that they've been talking about. And this is why, it's a 76 core GPU with access to 128 gigs of memory. Like that's enough to run a great big model. Oh, I said
twice. Third.
I want to make anyway, we'll talk about that later. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I did this week. I can't. this, but it's worth knowing, right? Like it's getting very close. So the part that I get excited about, Mike, this is I don't know if you'll see the value in this, but like you could talk to the model and ask it questions about your plan. Doesn't that make your little spine tingle with excitement? Do you think that's not valuable?
Maybe it would have if I hadn't just seen a news story this morning about somebody getting two AIs to do sex talk to each other. And so they used the Google AI chat feature.
I can't believe I'm going to ask this. What did it sound like?
They apparently it started out with a very robotic voice, and then it got increasingly evocative as the conversation went on.
Did it end with somebody being charged with something?
They were apparently the text of the conversation is NSFW.
Yeah.
So the story exists, but I haven't seen the transcript. So anyway, so to ask it a question, say, hey, does this hold water? Again, if you're feeding it your own, then
I agree.
it's just going to let you know it's going to smell just like it's going to smell just like what you want it to do. So maybe, I mean, because the thing is, so, you've got your local model. It's got to still take whatever data you give it and make sense out of whatever data you give it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have an independent source of evaluating that. It can only evaluate what you give it.
Yes.
So if all you do is give it one side of the story, it's not going to be able to even think about the other side of the story.
What's the story?
Well, whatever narrative you're trying to get out of it. If you're trying to demonstrate how good your idea is and all you do is show it your idea, then
it's got to compare it against other ideas.
Yeah, it would you'd also have to feed it bad ideas so that it could evaluate outcomes of good things versus bad things and then give you which ones are likely to go in that direction versus this direction.
You might be overthinking this. So let me. No,
you're right. I don't need good and bad to tell me the name of a bunch of teams.
Well, yeah. So it was interesting because, like, I don't know how to talk to a large language model. It felt like a kid talking to a girl for the first time. So I was like, "Here, okay. I've just given you a CSV. Do you see the CSV file?" And it said, "Yes, I do." Then I said, "This represents work items for a bunch of teams across a series of months. Do you see that?" It said, "Yeah, I do." Then it said, so I said, "Okay, the team, so what are the columns that you see in the CSV file?" And it showed me the columns, right? It got the smaller ones got it wrong. They made some up. The bigger one got it correct. Because that's how LLMs work.
It's that getting wrong part that just bugs me.
Yeah, so that's why you don't ask a 5-year-old for a status report. You ask the professional adult for the 5-year-old.
You're right. A 12-year-old has 7 billion things in their large language model, but a college-educated person has 70 billion. I still wouldn't trust their output.
Yeah. My point is there's a threshold across which you can trust their output. Right? Yeah. Theoretically, this is true. And that's what I saw with Perplexity, with whatever they've got in the back end. And I said, okay, can you calculate the average cycle time for all the work items for this team? And it said, yeah, I took the in-process date, compared it to the completed date. I got a bunch of things. It described how it did the calculation and said, as a result, the average cycle time is 4.7 days. Oh, give me the maximum. Give me the minimum. Like, it knew how to do all this stuff, and all the things that I checked, it was correct. So it's like you got to engage it in a conversation. It's really weird.
So it was able to understand the names of the columns.
I don't know that the word understand is right, but it
in
gave
order
me
to
correct
do
output.
I compared this column to that column and did the math, it would have to know the name of the column means something relative to the other one.
Yes, correct. And it again, I don't know that well, it gave me the right.
How would it do the calculation if it didn't understand that this column was bigger than that column?
This is
agree.
different. Well,
Yeah.
the reason is, I think, is there even a difference between using Excel to do the same calculation. I mean, there are functions.
Well, you had it in
averages and
Excel.
stuff
That's where
like
you
that.
got your CSV file.
Exactly. And so all it's doing is spewing back to you what you've already got data for, right? And so
Yeah, right now
How
it
could
seems
it-
like
how
your
could it-
test is not to ask it to give you information you don't already have. It's like you're asking a question you already have the answers to verify it's answering the question correctly.
okay. So that's my question, Matt.
Yeah.
Are you just this is an exercise to test the model to see
Yeah.
can it A take in some information and give you back an accurate answer?
It's a spike, gentlemen. It's a spike.
Well, okay, but so you'd have to ask it a question that isn't explicitly in the data. Or isn't explicitly in a column of the data, like to say which of these teams is most efficient, or
You'd have to establish what efficient means,
you know what?
which is
it
what I
has
did
to-
in my example.
It
I
has to
said,
get
do you
to
see the teams? Do you understand what started and done means for work items? Can you therefore calculate cycle time? Okay, go ahead and do that. Right? It's a conversation that you're having that you are sort of evolving
Okay.
the
So
sophistication.
you gave
So
it
the
the
question is,
understanding
where
of
does
which
that road
column
go?
meant what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, it gave me a guess, and the guess was correct. The 3 and the 7 versions didn't, but the one in Perplexity, it was like, yeah, this looks like the kind of that I do all the time. Again, they've obviously had a great big corpus
Well, they
of
have
data
a
they've
much
trained.
more robust
Yeah.
model than you have no idea how many billions of.
My guess is that it might be a version of the 70 billion model that fits on a MacBook Pro. That's the question, really.
That's a
But-
guess. That is a
course.
very big guess. How do you know it's not a network of
I don't.
128 of those machines?
I don't. But
You
so
know.
my point is, it's not if it's not viable today, it'll be viable
Call
in
them
6
and
months.
ask them.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sure they'd be.
just contact Perplexity. Just dial them up. Ask Perplexity to get you in touch with somebody who can tell you.
Or just ask Perplexity.
Yeah, ask
I absolutely
Perplexity.
should ask the model. Hey,
Hey, Perplexity,
which model are you
how many billions in your model? Go ahead.
using right now?
We'll wait.
Yeah, we need the whole music. How many tokens are in the model
No, that's the
Your-
answer. You have to be given the answer. And then
using to
Sorry.
answer
Jeopardy.
this question? It's not going to give me an answer to that, I don't think.
Why? Why do you think
Proprietary information. You may not
The
know.
model I'm using to answer this question, GPT-4, has a context window of 32,000 tokens.
That's way less than 70 billion.
I've noticed that. But my point is this is not obvious. Like, this is coming sooner rather than later. And the second you can get a genie on your MacBook that lets you find stuff that you couldn't know otherwise.
Is that variable, though?
I
In
don't
other
know.
words, you asked Perplexity a question, and it used 32 billion tokens?
32,000 tokens, it says.
Oh, 32,000 tokens.
I thought you only wanted to know my spare tokens.
But, but, but here's the
Parameter tokens. Go
Here's
ahead.
the question. Is it variable? And so depending on the complexity of the question, it may need 70,000, it may need 70 billion. I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting
Does the
thought.
number of tokens you use vary based on the question? So the bottleneck here is how quickly I can type with cold fingers.
Blow on them.
Thinking about it.
Or get one of those new heated keyboards.
There's a new heated keyboard?
The number of tokens used
Yeah.
by this model can indeed vary based on the question or input text.
makes
Tokenization
sense.
process, contextual, language
makes
dependency,
perfect sense.
dynamic token management. Yes.
So to answer
ATM.
your simple question, I only needed 330,000 of those tokens. But if you ask me something significant, I may use
Yeah.
up to.
If I have to translate from a different language, if there's sophisticated math or whatever, I don't know.
What's the maximum number of tokens it's ever used to answer a question? It will never know that.
What's the maximum number of tokens you can use? Probably 32, I'm thinking. Well, this is great pod, by the way, just asking if robot questions. Live to ships at sea. 4,000, I don't know. Oh, it's different from different models. I have a GPT-4 API. Oh, the API version is limited to 8,192. The extended version offers 33,700. I don't know.
See, that
Anyway.
sounds like input token. That sounds like keywords you're putting in. Like when it's parsing
No, tokens
your
means a
request.
specific thing. It's
Okay.
inside to the model. But I don't really know details on that.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway.
But sure, go drop $7,000 on a 70 billion token system.
Well, that's not what he's dropping the $7,000 on. He's dropping the $7,000 on.
On a machine that can support a 70 billion.
Right, and I think it's just an excuse to, justify buying yourself the latest Mac.
I've got
and then we're
plenty of
going to
Mac.
spend the next year listening to him about what Apple's uploading.
Apple.
I'm trying
is
to
a
get to
separate-
my 70 billion things, and you got a little updater jumping down in the window reminding me that something's...
Yeah. No, yeah. It's worth keeping an eye on because, like, I don't know. I'm fascinated by the upside of what you could do with that model. I mean, it's, if you're Mick Kirsten or somebody, like if you're running PlanView, or if you're running a company that does any of this, like if you've got a product that says, let's take in a bunch of data and manage a plan and talk about performance metrics, like you have got to be building this stuff into your current product, right?
So, Matt, let's explore that a little bit. One of the things that we preached is that, to quote Eisenhower, plans are nothing, planning is everything. And so, is there value in a plan? Because if you're asking an LLM to validate this, does this plan look viable? What is it? What's the outcome? Are we going to meet our end state, our end goal on time? I don't know. I mean, is that what your objective is if you're given a static plan? You're looking for validation, maybe? I don't know. That's my question.
Does
to
this
you.
plan look viable? Based on all this information, is this plan viable? Do you see a path
mean,
to success?
I don't know that that's a great answer because what does viable mean, right?
Well,
I don't know.
So you,
At some point we might be able
you
to
can tell
define
it
that.
what you can. That sounds like you prompt engineering. You should be describing what viable means. What, like,
Yeah.
if we hit. So there was somebody put a question into LinkedIn yesterday, the LinkedIn sphere, and it was an interview question for a project manager, and the person was asked, what do you do to ensure a project is successful? That was the question, and the response was, if I hit the deadline at budget, then it's successful.
It's not a how answer, though.
I know.
So
But
what?
then once they answered that question, then the interviewer asked back, well, let's mess that up a little. Let's say you did hit your budget and scope, and the client got it and was unhappy with the results. And the person's response was wishy-washy. Well, we had requirements and we met all the requirements. Da, da, da. And so the LinkedIn sphere comes down and jumps down the person's throat and says, you just failed the interview. That's not an appropriate response. Somebody came in with an agile approach and said, you should have been involving stakeholders all along. Da, da, da. Somebody else came in and how do I say this? They defended the original responder by saying they didn't fail. because once the project's over, just because then they have already, it's too late to do any of these things you're talking about. And it's like, dude, he set himself in this hole with his initial response. What he could have done at that very moment was say, well, we wouldn't have actually executed the project that way. We probably would have executed with frequent check-ins with the client. And so the likelihood of getting to that end state with them being just instantly unhappy would have been lessened.
Well,
but
my first thought is my first question would be, why wasn't customer happiness part of the requirements that you gave me?
Yeah.
Maybe that's always assumed.
Yeah.
Well,
and honestly, I think, even though I'm not a person that believes in making assumptions, I think that's true. I think that's a pretty valid assumption. If you're providing a service or a product to someone, there should be an implicit, if not explicit, assumption that customer happiness is paramount.
Okay,
you
and so
you could fix
to go
it just
back,
by
tell
saying,
the large language model what your conditions of success are.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
You'd have to let it know that. Then you can ask it the question. You can say, "Do you understand what customer satisfaction is? Do you understand?" I don't know how you would do it, but you would say something like that.
You would do it like that. You'd use
and
the
then
real
you could
language.
answer, and then you ask it the question: Is this a viable? Is this a path to success? And if magically it buys all your data and groks what you gave it and thinks of it the same way you do, and I know it doesn't think.
Yeah.
And it comes back and says, yes, now you've got something you can work with, because every day you can say, based on new data, based on the continual input of data that you're going to see reflecting status of our progress, are we still viable?
Viable having been defined in explicit numeric black and white.
Or
yes.
Right?
Yes.
So then you could use it
Yes.
to monitor progress.
Yes. Yes.
And then theoretically, assuming that all the stuff you put in, and when it told you, yes, you're viable, you were all actually aligned, then you might be able to trust that result.
Yes.
On the other hand, it might just be just as wishfully fulfilled as everyone else's. Like,
Why would
sure,
it be? Why
you
would
gave
it
me a plan. Sure, numbers add up today. I don't know. Maybe I'm being more cynical than necessary, but I could see maybe a smidge of utility there. But but again, that's data you could have done yourself.
I don't think so.
Why not?
I mean, so yes, it's true. So maybe this is the value that I see. So a good question to ask is, how hard is it to come up with the plan? How hard is it to make changes to the plan? How hard is it to evaluate
you didn't ask
potential
it to
changes
make the plan. You asked it to evaluate your plan.
But you could.
Oh, I definitely wouldn't trust it to do that.
Exactly. But you write in airplanes.
The airplane doesn't fly itself.
No, but the airplane is a very complicated set of mission-critical subsystems that have to be designed for very specific purposes, combined so that they work together in a specific way, monitored for reliability and utility. And if a couple of those goes wrong, people actually die. I see at a high level, I see you could build a thing with a bunch of complicated. It was going to take a long time to figure out exactly how it all fits together and why it makes sense.
I think your analogy would be
But
better.
I bet we're going to fly.
I
predict we're going to fly. I
think
predict
your
in 5
analogy
years.
would work better if the customers all input where they wanted to go, and then the plane based its destination on the requirements of all of its passengers, and then plotted a course and managed to deliver everybody safely, and they ain't doing that.
Jeff, is that a crazy analogy? Is the one person qualified to operate an airplane? That it's a combination of subsystems that fit together in a complicated way that gives utility that was previous to that impossible to even really understand how it would change your world. I'm way out on a limb here. I'm prepared for you to saw it off. Please do.
So there is validity in that analogy.
There's validity in that the plane is a complex system.
Yes. However, there's part of that complexity is the redundancy that's already built in. And that is why you are able to fly safely in most cases.
Yeah.
99.9999% of the time
Yeah.
from X to Z. But does that eliminate the intelligence that's sitting in the left seat, or even in the right seat for that matter, or having two brain powers that are much more powerful than any other computer in the world,
Yeah.
sitting in the left and right seat to make sure everything is going as planned.
Yeah.
So,
No, and I would say that's probably true for the LLMs going forward as well. You probably will always need human supervision in that sense. I would never just let one of these things roam.
Well, there you go. So
Yeah.
are you gonna trust it to give you a project plan? That
but
you
here's the
just-
thing.
that you
I
just
think
trust-
what I hear Matt saying is, if I had it develop a plan, I would still get two eyes on it, try to think it through. I mean, I would hope that you would do that.
It's just to do the grunt work of putting the plan together and calculating the what if scenarios. Like
Here's
you
the
could
first
do that.
draft.
Yeah.
Tell me what are the risks, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, and we've talked about this before. If you were to have an LLM write something, if there is value in it, at least at this juncture, that value might be in conjuring up a first draft.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a really, really rough first draft.
full of a lot of incorrect assumptions.
It could be.
Just like
absolutely.
your first draft might be as a person. But it happens orders of magnitude quicker.
Yeah.
You're uncomfortable.
He's uncomfortable with
Well,
it.
no, because you're right. I
doesn't
could
like
get
it.
faster. That doesn't help me in the back end. I can spend weeks making. Now you can give it to me in seconds. But I still have to suss out. Like maybe it's just in my own creation of that work item. I would be editing the crap out as I thought of it. I wouldn't be injecting it in the first place.
So think about this though. What do we talk about when we are trying to plan something? We do it collaboratively.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't just sit in a room and hatch a plan by yourselves. I mean, you can, and
When I want to
people
fail, I do.
People have done this for time immemorial, and guess what happens?
They fail.
They lay a big egg, and it's a rotten egg usually. So we want that collaborative effect. And why? Because we want multiple voices, multiple perspectives, the diversity of all this different thought and perspectives to be baked in, because it can help us to avoid blind spots and scotomas and stuff like that.
And so I think I think that what we have here is a distinction in interpretation of what that LLM partner in this game plays. I think of it as an individual. It's one opinion among many, and Matt thinks of it as an amalgam of many opinions.
Ooh. Do you, Matt?
I'm not sure what Mike means by that.
Well, if I was getting a team together to make a project plan, and I, to Jeff's point, put together a bunch of differing opinions so that I could cover all the blind spots and everything that I would think of.
I'm not trying to be
that I'm
difficult.
missing.
Opinions about what? About what the plan
About
should
the
look like?
plan. What the plan should be, what it should contain, what it's missing, where the mistakes are, where the risks are, all that other stuff. All the stuff you have when you have a team developing a plan, right? Now you're saying you could just hand this thing to an LLM and in seconds get back a plan, which you then would go through a vetting process on.
Not really.
Now the question is, well,
What I'm saying is I gave it a CSV file that includes a plan in the sense that it describes work items that have start and end dates and a team attached. And so the question is, what's the overall team of teams, what SAFE would call the program level? Like, what's the program board look like for this team of teams? That data is all in the CSV file.
Right, you already have that data. You're just asking it to rearrange it.
Yeah, what I'd like to ask it to do for version 1 is to say, visualize this for me, show me all the stuff, so that my little puny human brain can even appreciate what the plan looks like altogether. And then I can ask it, okay, I've got a new project coming in that's going to take these 3 teams, for example. It's going to take this long. It needs to end by this date. If I made a change to the plan that accommodated that, what would it do to the rest of the stuff? Assume this team has a WIP limit of 3. That can only do 3 things at a time. So this has to move forward. Like, just generate in a couple seconds. If we had to make this change here, what would be all the implications to the plan, the existing plan? That would take a person at least a few minutes.
I don't
probably
know
longer than that.
I don't know if you did this intentionally or not, but when you were talking to your imaginary LLM just now, you gave it 3 assumptions that all have to be true in order for the plan to work. You said it's going to take this long. You said it has this deadline. We have these teams with this capability. If those 3 things don't align perfectly, you don't have a plan. You've got a wish. But you just told the LLM, this is a plan. We have a plan with this date, this thing, this thing. Yeah. It's got to assume you're right.
Of course. I'm the human. It's the model.
Right.
And I'll define all this stuff.
We have that all the time. How many times have you been at a client where they said, this is our deadline, this is our team, this is our scope. We have to hit that date, and we're going to hit that date. Because if we don't hit that date, then we fail. And we're not going to fail. So we're going to hit that date. And it's like, but you don't have alignment. You don't have a plan, right? You've got a wish. You've got something you sold to the higher ups that this might, that this looks like it's spending your money wisely. But rest assured, we will hide any news from you that this isn't going according to plan.
I guess I'm not.
It's a willful denial of the reality of the situation.
But Mike,
I'm confused.
So
I'm totally confused.
Well, you just confused your LLM. You just told it what the truth is, and the truth is it's not true. You started with the assumption that what I was about to give you is solid.
But I think, Matt, weren't you trying to have the LLM validate whether the plan that you've presented to it is...
Validate's not the right word.
No. He was giving... you and I were talking about using the LLM to make a plan. He was talking about giving it a plan we already have in the form of a CSV, which still does not seem like it. It's still giving it information you already have. So
well, of course it's information you already have. I'm asking it to visualize the plan that exists already in the data, and I'm asking it to evaluate potential changes to the plan based on new information. The same thing that humans would do. Well, the thing that I notice when I go to clients and help them work with this is that it takes a long time, right? Like, how many meetings have you been in, in situations where we're trying to use scaled agile and prepare for PI planning, and all these teams need their epics and their features and their stories, and they have to be in there. And is this, what about this? Did we forget about this? How do these 3 things fit together? There's an endless series of questions that all require some product owner or product manager or a combination of tech leads or whoever to go figure out, okay, so if we assume pass these new constraints into the plan, what would that look like? I wouldn't ask the model to validate it, because that's something really only a human could do, to say this actually makes sense based on all the stuff I know as a human that you can't know as a model. But just the grunt work of saying, where does this box fit and what would it do to the other boxes on the visualization? That's a thing that you can have a computer do really quickly. It doesn't mean it's correct. It means it's the logical sort of new picture based on the constraints and the information you passed it.
So what's the value of having the computer do it then? If
You know it immediately, and you can say in the meeting, oh, that does work or it doesn't work.
You get an untrustworthy response faster.
Yeah, you don't trust the computer. Trust is not the right word. You evaluate the potential it gives you, and if one of them's correct and you got it 100 times faster than you would have gotten it with people, that seems valuable. That's all I'm saying.
So ordinarily, in that situation, if we were doing it in an analog way, you would have gone to one of the individuals on the team and said, okay, go figure out what the impact would be if we add this box to the plan. You would say that because you don't have a computer to do it. So you would ask the person to do it. And the person would look at the plan and they would move stuff around and they would come back and say, based on my analysis, I believe this would impact the plan this way. And then show his work, and the rest of the team would go, yeah, okay, no, wait, you made a mistake here, or whatever. But collaboratively, they would come up with an adjustment to the plan as a result of doing that. What I hear you saying is, let the computer do that calculation. The person doesn't have to go off and spend time. We're in the same meeting. We get the answer right back. Now we can look at it. The problem that I have is that because the computer did the calculation, you don't have the same manner of checking the work that you had because it instantly went like that. And the person representing the answer didn't do the calculation. The model did the calculation.
The person representing the answer is sitting there real time.
So you have to trust it implicitly that the calculation is going to give you is any damn good.
If you insist on trusting the computer, you can do that. That's not what I'm proposing.
But that's the thing. You can't question the result if you can't see the work.
Of course you can. You have to every time. You have to question it every time.
If that's the case, then what's the value of it then?
It happens faster than having a person do it.
But the person still has to evaluate it.
If that person is in the room,
yeah, they could do it just as fast as a computer.
No,
In which
have
case,
a computer. It's up here, and it is fast.
Okay, I'm going to make a prediction that this will be a thing that we do routinely in a couple of years.
Oh,
I just
no,
want to
you're
lay that
right.
marker down. That's my prediction.
It
I
will
could
be something
wrong,
we do,
but I
because
disagree with you guys completely.
it will be a thing because you're going to get to the point where you have to trust the computer. The same way we trust compilers now. We didn't used to trust the compiler. When I started being a programmer, when we were going from assembly into C and we were first going, hey, I wrote this stuff in English, go make machine code. And most of the time it worked. And most of the time we could trust it. But every once in a great while, the program did not do what we told it to do. And if you dug into the machine code, you found where the compiler made a mistake. The compiler interpreted the code wrong. It did the wrong thing. And over the years,
like every other machine that we've ever created, I don't trust the ILS system.
That
I
used to
assume
be
there's a pilot
relatively more
monitoring.
common, and we still had to go back and dig through. We had to have ways of telling, oh, wait a minute, we just got a bad response,
Yeah.
right? So you've got to have something that checks the numbers that you're getting back. For now, we don't have a trustworthy system yet. We should not be trusting it with life-altering decisions. We have to check the work. So the speed... No, you are running a business.
We're in violent
business
agreement
lives
about
or
that.
dies by the response you give or by the data you produce or the outcome you create. So when you engage your helpful intern to give you that information, your mechanical intern, you still have to check the work. So yes, you got it faster, but you still had to check the work. So you don't have your time savings yet because it's still earning your trust. So sure, there's a future in which you earn the trust, but you know what's going to happen is someone's going to take their large language model and you're going to give yours is going to give your answer, and they're going to say, hey, my large language model, please check his answer. Because that can happen faster than I can do that. So the second you start doing that, then you're taking control of the conversation away from the people for speed, for efficacy. I trust my system, you trust your system. Let's just have the systems talk to each other, and we'll just trust the answer. Because you can't check their calculation. You can't check their work. They looked at 70 billion data points to give you your answer. You can't do that. So at some point, you're going to have to take the blinders off and just say, I trust the response. So when does that, and so, yeah, that's going to happen. Someday it's going to be a trusted situation, and it's going to be at your side, and it's going to give you the answer. You're going to be in the plane, and the AI is going to pop up and helpfully inform you that you have only a 15% chance of landing this plane successfully based on all past flights. And that if you want your best chances,
I don't think that's how it works at all.
But that's
I don't think that's realistic at all. I completely disagree. I don't trust the ILS system or any autopilot, and I wouldn't ride on an airplane without a person who was monitoring it at this point.
well,
Maybe ever. So trust again. I think trust is the wrong
What are you gaining by
word.
having the AI there? What would you gain by having that? I mean, Jeff said earlier, it's redundancy. It's not there as the primary; it's there as the backup, the last ditch thing.
Yeah.
The human pilot has failed. We have no other choice than to let the robot fly the plane.
It's speed. It's intelligence. It's raw intelligence that can
If
be
it was
used.
speed and intelligence, you would just. What was it that Chad said last week, that they had Air Force planes that were driven by AI that could just fly the pants off any human pilot?
Yeah,
And
very much.
for speed and efficiency, someone's going to make the choice and say, we should just let the robot do the work. Because it's faster. It's a
But
better
not
answer.
based
You've
on
done it
trust.
yourself multiple times through this whole conversation. It's faster,
Yeah.
right?
But you don't trust the
you
unmanned
don't have
Air
a
Force
choice.
drone.
You're talking about a high-speed combat mission. You don't have a moment to
What
go.
I'm saying,
the
Mike,
robot
is
has
trust
decided
is not the
to
right
do
word.
this.
It's not hoping and believing that it'll do the thing. It's having evidence that it will do the same thing every time based on the same set of inputs. That's not trust. That's engineering.
Okay. So now, again, you've got your robot doing battle with another robot. They have their own amalgam of responses. They don't even have to have the fight. They already know what the outcome's going to be. That was the one
That's an
conversation
interesting
about
statement.
if you had an
Probably
right.
war goes away because we can just do the calculations and everybody
Yeah.
sees that this side
You already
will lose,
lost.
so that side
Let's
just
just-
decides not
yeah.
to fight. I think that's a valid, yeah.
as long
Okay,
as the
we're coming
success parameters were the preservation of all the non-combatants.
Okay. So we're coming up on the end of the time box. This has been an awesome conversation, I think. Jeff, do you have any? You've been sitting there like thinking, I think. Do you
No,
have any-
I
think you're thinking.
I'm intrigued. After our conversation with Chad last week, it shed a little bit more light and got me thinking about some things, and how that kind of flavors this conversation here. I think there's potential, but I'm still fuzzy on what you're trying to accomplish and what's the value of it. And maybe it's just that it's the human in this whole exercise here that needs to get better focused on what is the intent and what is the value, because I think the horsepower and everything that goes with an augmented intelligence has a lot of potential, but I think it's important for us to get it right and understand what is it that what's the outcome that we're really looking for. And I'm not sure you conveyed, at least for me, what is the value of it right now. Maybe it's just, an opportunity for you to play with it, just to see what it'll do. And if that's your goal, great. See what it can do, what it can't do, what are its boundaries and capabilities. You're not looking for an actual answer yet, right? That you can, and I'm going to use that word again, trust. Because you're saying you trust is not part of the equation, right?
I'm saying that's the wrong way to think about it at this time. I'm saying, like, if I was driving a car in 1920, I wouldn't trust it.
Well, you
I
didn't
would
have a
view it
choice.
as a, but I
it
would
was the
view
only
it
game
as
in
a,
town.
I would view it as a very big improvement over a horse.
Why wouldn't you trust it?
Because the engine's going to fail, the tires pop, the transmission slips.
You
It's
actually
the
didn't know that
early
at
version.
first. You had
You
this
found out
magical
really
tool that you had this magical thing that was available as a horseless carriage. It used 0 horses,
All right.
and it eliminated the need to provide it food. And it didn't care. It had all these things, and people went and said, "I'm getting me a horseless carriage, and how much does it cost me, and what colors can I get?" And so they went and started this long relationship, and then they found out there were failures, that there were times that it didn't work reliably, and that was probably a pretty high rate at the beginning. And it's like it was almost a status symbol. Look, I have one of these newfangled horseless carriages, and I know I'm spending half my time on the side of the dirt path cranking the engine and trying to get it running again. But when it runs, it goes at an astounding 15 miles an hour. And it's so much better that we're at the barely horseless carriage stage of AI.
So I don't trust it, but it's going to get a lot better. And we're at the time box. We have to, and any other,
We're coming close.
Final.
We got 3 more minutes to think of other random thoughts.
is there anybody we should get on the call next time to
Well, isn't
extend this
Nigel on the
conversation?
call next time? Or
I
are
think
we?
he's on the 4th, but like
Oh, it's the 4th. We got
specifically
one more.
to this conversation. Do you want to extend and revise our remarks with a guest, or do you guys, have we beaten this to death?
No, we haven't
Oh.
We haven't even begun to beat it to death.
Yeah, clearly you're
that's
still
right.
wanting to spend $7,000 on laptops.
But I think you should. I think you should buy
Yes,
5 of them.
yes. You should stop trying to justify this by saying I want to run a 70 billion model and just say I want the bigger GBs.
I don't want the bigger GBs. I've got plenty of MacBook until I started to try to do this, and it turns out it's just barely possible.
So there's an experiment for you, Matt. I want you to go out and buy 5 of those, and I want you to try to network them, daisy chain them, whatever, and see if you can really accelerate the horsepower. Who knows? Maybe there's 140 billion
If not now, soon.
that you can handle.
Yep. I am on the fence. I'm going back and forth. It's about the utility. Is it worth it, right? And it's so, I don't know. Maybe I will. Tune in next time to find out.
Okay.
Did we solve it?
I think we solved it. Not at all. But that's why we're going to talk to somebody else on January.
We'll take it. We'll take a volunteer. A volunteer from the audience. Who would like to come in
Yes.
and be the expert to set me straight
Or give us a suggestion.
or
Who
talk
would,
Matt off the ledge?
Yeah.
One of the
now
two.
I'm on a ledge. Yeah. Let us know who you'd like to hear from so we can make material progress on this conversation.
At this here Agile thing.
Because here it is. Here was this Agile thing. My name was Matt Beam.
I have been Mike Markey.
And I'm still Jeff Singleton.
And we will see you next time. Thank you. Goodbye, ships at sea.